UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today, we're joined by Max Dorsey to kind of discuss UCLA's week of recruiting, notable visits, some recruits also named UCLA in their, final teams. Things like that are really important, especially for recruiting. But yeah, Max, you can take it from here. Anything you wanted to kind of point out, any notable visits that you like. Again, a lot of teams players cut down, their few teams that they're looking to play for. Just anything like that.
Yeah, so we'll start with visits, and this kind of carries over from what me and you talked about last week, Andrew. As the 2027 cycle continues, you're going to see a lot more players across the country really start to schedule official visits with some of their top schools as they get closer to making their decisions. And Chesney and his staff at UCLA have done really a fantastic job since Chesney took over the program on the recruiting trail. They're making progress with some of, the top in-state players, some of the top prospects overall in the 2027 class, and we're really seeing the Bruins kind of emerge as a contender here for some super talented recruits. And two of those recruits scheduled official visits over the past week, one of those being Juju Johnson, a four-star cornerback from Long Beach Poly High School in California. His official visit is set from June 19th to the 21st, and he's the number 48 overall prospect in the class and the number 6 cornerback, a really talented player. This is someone that UCLA has kind of surged on as of late. Wasn't really considering UCLA throughout the fall. And then when Chesney took over, they kind of prioritized him as a recruit, and they're really, really gaining ground pretty fast here. So expect UCLA to be in contention for him. He's also taking official visits with Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Miami. And as it stands today, Oklahoma is the leader in his recruitment, but plenty of stuff can change in the coming months. And then the other OV that I wanted to point out is Jeremiah Williams, a defensive tackle prospect from Tustin High School, also in California. So another in-state guy. He'll be on campus visiting on June 5th. He's number 262 overall player in the class and the number 32 defensive lineman. He also has official visits with UNC, BYU, and Arizona State as well. So again, these are two very, very talented in-state prospects. I mean, you have talked almost ad nauseum at this point about how Chesney is really prioritizing the West Coast and California specifically. These are two of the top prospects in California, and now UCLA is in solid position with both of them, and we'll have them both on campus in the near future.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. These players are going to be huge pieces. We saw kind of the fallout of, Deshaun Foster leaving. We lost Anthony Jones and Carter Gooden, two, really good players on that defensive line. And to have Jeremiah Williams in the building is obviously going to help, UCLA kind of soothe that wound. And yeah, Juju Johnson, 4-star, great player, as we know. Right now, like the transfer portal, I kind of looked at what UCLA could have done better. I think we really did miss, that like lockdown cornerback. And if you can get someone, early like Juju Johnson, Jerry Outhouse, any of those players who, are, prevalent at the position, I think UCLA will be in good shape in the future. Again, just like kind of building that, core, identifying their weaknesses. Chesney can address these, through recruitment. I think the Bruins will have a good chance to really make some noise, in the near future. And like you said before, it's a great time to be a Bruins fan. I think, these visits kind of reflect that. But yeah, so obviously these visits are awesome. Any notable finalists, that or any players who put UCLA down as a finalist who could really, elevate this team, players you think have the most chance of probably going towards UCLA? Obviously, there's a lot of competition. If you're sharing a top 10 spot with the other teams, obviously they're looking at those teams just as hard. So, yeah.
Yeah, so there's actually been 4 players who have named UCLA as a finalist in the recruitment over the last week alone. So really been a chaotic week for Chesney and his staff, but a good week because this really means that they're serious contenders for all these prospects. And I'll kind of go one by one here, starting with a quarterback prospect that me and you have talked about before, Dane Weber, a 4-star quarterback from Chaparral High School, another in-state kid. I believe it's a 2.5-hour drive from UCLA, so not that close to campus, but another California prospect. He named UCLA to his top 8 schools alongside Cal, Cincinnati, Kansas, Kansas State, Michigan, Oregon, and Stanford. He's the number 380 overall prospect in the class and the number 29 quarterback. A really talented player. This is a guy that can do it both through the air and on the ground. He threw for over 3,600 yards and 41 touchdowns while adding 688 yards and 14 scores as a runner. So this is a guy that UCLA has really been heating up on as of late. They like where they stand with him. It's going to be competitive recruitment. You know, some of those schools that were named alongside UCLA are some of the top programs in the nation. But I do really like what I've seen out of UCLA here in this recruitment, and I do believe they're trending in the right direction for Weber.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think right now Kansas is in the lead. And, you know, UCLA has that advantage, obviously, that location. I don't know if you saw, but like Donovan Dent had a feature, you know, like a little package thing or whatever. But as a Cali kid, you know, UCLA is always going to be that staple for players looking to play, you know, D1 ball. And again, I think that will heavily influence Weber. I think, you know, whatever UCLA decides to do, whether it's kind of rely on recruitment or the transfer portal for that position, I think it is good to kind of build those roots still in Cali. I like Weber. I think he could be a great piece for UCLA, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that's just a good pick. I mean, Gavin Williams, you know, all those players that you kind of mentioned. What else are you seeing from, you know, the other finalists kind of coming down?
So we'll head over to Gavin Williams, who you just touched on. Another player, and you're going to see this a lot, just in terms of, you know, the timeline of when Chesney was hired, that UCLA hadn't really been in the mix for before Chesney's hiring. But since then, the new Bruins staff has really prioritized him as one of their top recruits and have surged in his recruitment. So the Bruins made his top 5 schools alongside Notre Dame, Texas A&M, USC, and Washington. So, you know, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and USC, those are 3 of the top programs in the nation, especially when it comes to recruiting. It's going to be hard for UCLA to compete. But again, they've really surged here. He likes where the Bruins stand. He likes the new staff. And this is another highly talented California prospect from Damien High School. He's the number 146 overall player in the class, number 13 safety prospect. In addition to naming UCLA as a finalist in his recruitment, he's also scheduled to take an OV with the Bruins from May 15th to the 19th. So this is a guy that they'll get on campus. They've made his final 5. And, you know, again, it's going to be a highly competitive recruitment, but it's certainly one that UCLA can win.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, landing him would ultimately send a message to, you know, other recruits, the league. I mean, it's not like as crazy as, you know, like Travis Hunter signing with Jackson State, but still,
yeah,
UCLA being that underdog, coming in, getting, you know, a 4-star safety who obviously is touted very highly around the nation. And again, if you're Chesney and you're kind of looking at who else is kind of looking to get him, obviously there is a clear gap between, you know, success, but if he can still pull it off, I think that's a good thing. And like you said, USC is also in the running. Obviously, if you're a UCLA coach, you don't want your players or, you know, the people you're looking at USC. So I think Williams could be a guy to definitely keep an eye on. Obviously, great player, but besides that, you don't want him going to, you know, any of these rival schools. And that's going to be a very big, important piece, especially as Chesney kind of starts looking at more of these California players. And I also kind of touched on it on, you know, Juju Johnson. UCLA really needs to build that secondary a little bit more. Where it's at now, it seems really patchworky. I mean, we still got good guys, but still, any additions are going to make this team a lot better, and especially if you land a 4-star like Gavin Williams. Anyone else that you kind of wanted to talk about when it comes to finalists?
Yeah, there's 2 more, and I'll start with another California kid. It's Montana Toilolo. Pardon me if I pronounce that wrong. It's a 3-star defensive lineman from Mater D. So, like I said, this is another in-state recruit, another highly talented player. He's the number 460 overall prospect in the class, the number 54 defensive lineman. He named the Bruins to his top 6 alongside Oregon, Notre Dame, Arizona, Miami, and Washington. And he's another guy that has scheduled an official visit with the Bruins. He'll be on campus from May 15th to the 17th. So This is, again, another talented recruit, in-state recruit. I do like where UCLA stands. Just another prospect, where they weren't necessarily in the mix before, but with this new staff, they've kind of surged as of late. And again, this is a growing trend. You're going to hear me talk about it basically every week that I'm on until, the new UCLA staff kind of gets settled. But you're really, really starting to see them prioritize the West Coast, prioritize California, and make waves in the state. And I think Toilolo is another prospect that they could definitely end up landing.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, UCLA lost out on two really good players on the defensive line. Obviously, if we're able to get Toilolo, I think that, again, that really helps. And the teams you kind of mentioned, I feel like, appealing. I think, again, as a Cali kid, UCLA is that school where, everyone wants to go. Obviously, great academics, great location, stuff like that are all going to play into that. But yeah, if you really want to, build that defensive line, because ultimately that is what wins you, championships. That's what pushes success. It's building the trenches. I think in Chesney's first year, I think one of the biggest critiques Signetti's first year at Indiana, one of the biggest critiques was, how small his defensive line is. And then we saw how that kind of paid off in the college football playoffs that first year. Notre Dame ran all over them. Obviously, Jeremiah Love is just a good player, but still, obviously, that's the winning formula in college football. And again, UCLA showing that initiative. Obviously, Chesney is a good recruiter. He's turning heads of a lot of these recruits. That's going to be sustainable. I don't think that'll change. So again, like you said, great time to be a Bruin fan. It seems like they have all the pieces that they know what they want to do, and they're kind of putting these pieces together. And you can only really be excited about that. And you mentioned you had one more player. Did you want to talk about him?
Yeah, you've talked about team needs, especially in the secondary and on the defensive line. Another massive need for the Bruins, especially with Wayne Knight kind of being a rental here for just one season, most likely, is is the running back position. And they're targeting one of the top running backs in the country, Isaiah Rogers from Springfield Central High School in Massachusetts. And he named UCLA to his top 8 last week alongside Georgia, Indiana, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Penn State, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech. He's the number 162 overall prospect in the class, the number 9 running back. He's coming off a season where he recorded 986 yards on the ground, 373 yards as a receiver, and 17 total touchdowns. And again, this is an interesting one, Andrew, because unlike these previous guys, not only is he not a California kid, but he's not even a West Coast kid. This is a guy that goes to school in Massachusetts, but UCLA has kind of, asserted themselves into his recruitment. They've emerged as a contender for him. And I think that UCLA, although they're geographically at a, possibly a disadvantage, I think they are still very much in the mix for him. And like I hinted at before, this is definitely a position of need for the Bruins in the 2027 cycle. So getting a running back of Rogers' caliber would be huge for the program.
Yeah, no, I honestly couldn't agree more. And like you said, Wayne Knight is a rental. So again, I think a lot of, that kind of push to getting him is going to be kind of contingent on how well Knight is able to perform in that system. If, he rushes for, over 1,200 yards and you're Rogers kind of looking at that, that UCLA respects and wants to use the run game a lot more. And if he feels like he can fit that mold, obviously he's going to want to do that. And again, that location disadvantage, it makes it hard for any player to really want to pack up and go across the country. Obviously, you mentioned a lot of other teams, SEC, that's kind of where teams want to play. But again, if you're UCLA kind of looking at what your needs, I think running back is definitely a place where you need to prioritize. Again, we saw how well Knight did under Dean Kennedy at James Madison. So we can expect, a more prevalent run game. I mean, obviously, Amaliava is going to help out in the passing game. So we might see, a different balance with UCLA, but still, if you're able to get Rogers, that again sends a message. UCLA could position themselves as like a running back university. With Wayne Knight getting drafted out, probably. Again, the players or whoever's on the team right now really needs to show, why UCLA is the school for that position. And I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into kind of getting a guy that far away. But again, if you're UCLA and you're looking at what you're going to need in the future, that is a player you really cannot miss. I think they'll be fine if they don't get him, but still, that is a player you really need to prioritize, especially when you're trying to establish your offensive identity in college football. But yeah, out of those four players or whatever, who do you think one, UCLA has the best chance of landing, and two, who do you think UCLA really cannot miss, really needs to get, and that kind of thing?
I think it's kind of a 1 for 2 here, and it's going to be Dane Weber, the quarterback. Obviously, it's a cliche, but as silly as it may sound, quarterback is far and away the most important position in the sport. And you talked about Nico and his ability to contribute to the passing attack. Well, Nico's not going to be in Westwood long, and there are some question marks about UCLA's quarterback room behind him. So I think that getting a talented quarterback who can come in and Weber isn't a guy that will start for you year 1, but could start by year 2 and certainly would be a starter by year 3. I think getting a guy into your quarterback room, an in-state guy as well, would be, massive for Chesney and the staff.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I'm obviously going to go another route with that. I think Gavin Williams, again, kind of taking that from USC. I feel like in year 1, if you lose a recruit to USC, again, that's gonna, that's gonna go to USC's head. They're gonna think they could trample over UCLA again if they get him. That sends a huge message to the rest of the nation that UCLA is capable of, getting a player like that. But as terms of highest chance of getting, again, I think Dane Weber is a really good pick to be, the most likely to come to UCLA. Again, I think KU is the other team in contention right now. Not many connections. Like you said, Weber is a Cali kid. Again, like I mentioned before, UCLA is that school if you're a Cali kid. But yeah, again, looking at the visits that we've had, kind of a similar question. What is one visit you feel like UCLA simply cannot mess up on and really needs to, put their best foot forward, do what they can to, get this kid when he's in the building?
I think you just touched on it as well here. It's going to be Gavin Williams. And there is the USC factor here because UCLA, throughout Williams' recruitment, has really kind of been the main school. I believe in Rivals' recruiting prediction machine, they're currently favored to land him still. And we've really kind of seen UCLA make a push. They hosted him on a junior day visit. They had a lot of success on that junior day visit, and that's what's really caused them to leapfrog into his top 5 here. So we've seen the effects that visits can have on a player like Williams already, and then getting him back on campus for that official visit, where it's really the main focus is going to be on him, showing him everything that UCLA has to offer, talking to him about how he fits into the system, fits into the scheme, what his role would be year 1. I think all those things are really going to be motivators to him potentially choosing UCLA. And I think that if they can find success in that visit, there is an opportunity for the Bruins to potentially leapfrog the Trojans in his recruitment. Yeah, no.
I think for me, though, I agree with you totally on Gavin Williams. He is a player you really want to hit on good. But I'm going to go with Jeremiah Williams. Like I said, UCLA lost out on Anthony Jones and Carter Gooden, both great players. Obviously this would have been a different conversation if they were to land him, but still UCLA really needs that, talent coming from high school coming in. Obviously they can hit on the portal like we saw Zahir West, stuff like that, but still really building it from the ground up. I think that is important for any school. And again, Jeremiah Williams is a beast, 4-star, great player. That is not a player you really want to miss up on. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Gavin Williams is that guy you really need to get. Not only, again, it sends a message to the rest of the nation, all the Cali schools, that UCLA does mean business to be able to, land a 4-star player of Gavin Williams' caliber. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to hit on before we kind of end the show? Things like that.
Yeah, I would just say, a lot of the movement right now is kind of slow and steady, and it's stuff like getting players on campus for visits, and it's going to be, you make a player's top 10 and then top 8 and then top 5 and then top 3, and there isn't going to be too much movement over the next month, I would say. But once these visits get rolling, I think you're going to see a lot of commitments start to happen and a lot of movement in these recruitments. So for UCLA to kind of be positioning themselves as contenders right now, while it may not seem like the biggest news, it's certainly going to help them down the line. And it's something to look forward to for UCLA fans.
Yeah, no, again, it's a huge time for UCLA, again, positioning themselves as one of the better teams in Cali. Obviously Chesney things like that all play into that. But again, it's only evident once you see recruiting start to fall. And like you said, it's going to be a slow burn, but still, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for UCLA to gain ground on some of these recruits that they didn't have before. But again, if you're a fan, you got to look out for that and see, kind of some of the, habits that this new staff is kind of building. And again, good time to be a Bruins fan. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me and Max this morning. It's obviously a treat to kind of look at all these recruiting things, look into UCLA's future, because that's just as important as what's in the present. But yeah, again, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I'm Andrew Ferguson, joined by Max. And as always, fours up and have a good day.